solving approach, and those who've been involved in what it takes to win reviews will experience some of the correct problem solving framework in which that process has been administered. And Brian is a colleague of Andy's from the States. So I'm going to pass straight over to Andy to do the intro to today and to themselves.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. Morning, folks. Thank you, everybody, for coming along, and also particularly thank you to Alex and Steve. I haven't seen Wilkins. He's not here. Okay, for helping. And Steve, is there Steve here? Behind the scenes. So thank you. What we're going to talk about today is to share some information with you about creative leadership, so to help bring energy to life. So this is this notion of kind of releasing talent and people's skills, their energy, if you like, as much as we can, and get them ready for. We talk about moments of truth. Brian's going to talk about the moments of truth quite a lot as well, but it's the idea of lots of moments of truth. So that's kind of a brief for today, and that's what we're going to try and share with you. My background, just very briefly, as Alex said, I met Chris McLeod. No booing, because he's gone. About 3 years ago on the Masters in Innovation, Creativity and Leadership, where I teach at Cass Business School. And Chris came back and was working then with yourself, Alex, and Stu Pickering. Okay, no booze there. Okay, so, and it's gone from there, and that's where I then met Mish and Paul and some other folks, and we kind of did some work with the strength and conditioning teams on the games reviews, and then it kind of grew from there into the involving what it takes to win, where again I've met some folks in the development of that. So that's kind of briefly my connection and back history into EIS and UK sports. I'm also a partner in a consulting firm. You'll see the name on here called Perspective, where we apply this sort of work all around the world. I'm also a non-exec chairman of a not-for-profit firm where we apply pretty much what you're learning here today, and we put it in care homes. So, and everywhere we do this, we managed to get an outstanding from the Care Quality Commission. So that's briefly the background from me. I'm going to introduce my friend Brian in a minute, but we have a shared interest in this field of creative leadership. So let me just ask this question. So we're going to share some information about leadership that creates. What does leadership create, folks? This is an interactive session. You can ask anything, say anything, you know, this is kind of like, so what does leadership create?
Environments.
It creates environments, yeah? Opportunities, yeah. What else? Problems. It creates problems. It creates problems in the side. When you said that, that could be on the dark side or the positive side, depending how you see the word problem. Yeah. What else?
Followers.
Followers. Yeah. So
Leaders.
It creates further leaders, right? Yeah. So what else?
I would say organised chaos.
It can create chaos. Yeah. What's the opposite? What would the opposite of organised chaos?
Disorganised chaos.
Disorganised.
No, I mean that in a positive way. I think chaos is a really positive thing. So
Right.
I don't mean that in a negative way.
Sure.
So.
Sure, that the whole thing about being on the edge of chaos. Yeah. So that's kind of we're going to build on all those. That's what it's about. It's about leadership that creates. That's kind of what we mean by creative leadership. So as we go through this, here's the kind of plan. We like to set up norms. One of the things is kind of there's a relationship between you and us here. So we can only ever own 50% of the contract. So if you want to check in with you, okay with this, what I need from you is try be here. Our commitment to you is to keep you interested and provide an opportunity to give you some new things and thoughts, if you like, to potentially try out. So that's kind of our contribution to you. What I need from you is to be here. So we don't kind of do that phones off and all that stuff. I mean, if you can't be in the present and be here, we're not even really at the starting block. So we're not, so just be here if you can. And I don't know, maybe think about what have you got to let go of? Sometimes we have to let go of some things just to let some new things in. Sometimes that's called learning, you probably know. So what I'm hoping I've got in the room, what I'm trying to do with you is that whatever you've been thinking about coming here today and networking with some old friends and things, is I'm trying to bring you into the room to think about getting yourself into being like really good learners. That's kind of what I need from you for the next couple of hours. That's what we're looking for. And there's just some of the principles and thoughts and we believe about learning. You may recognize this one. It's called PPI. It's a different PPI, of course. But this comes from originally the Florida Tennis Center, but it's now the Johnson & Johnson High Performance Institute. And performance is potential myosin inhibitors. So getting ourselves away from what we've just been doing and thinking about how do we learn well. We're going to talk about some strategies in a minute, but these are some of the things we really deeply believe in. Is that the eyes are blind if the mind hasn't got certain things loaded up. You just don't notice things. If you're not loaded with some new knowledge, you just don't notice things. So it's about grinding out a new set of lenses, if you like, to see things. However, and this is another one, some of you know Deming and the whole quality, lean, Six Sigma, and all that sort of stuff. Deming said, it's not good enough to do your best. You need to know what to do and then do your best. So you kind of got to have that knowledge, if you like, first of all. How, on the other hand, we can explain stuff to you, but ultimately you have to understand it. You have to own it and absorb it. So, that makes sense. That's some basic principles around learning that we believe in. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my my friend, my mentor, colleague from the US, Brian Dorval. He also, he's like our sister company in the USA. He also, I don't know whether you guys kind of lean much into the tennis world, he also does a bit of tennis work. So I've said kind of just roll with kind of, I don't know, do you guys, the LTA do their own thing, or do you ever, I can't remember, I haven't asked you this, do you lean into the tennis world or not? They do their own thing? Okay, so keep the tennis stuff back. So okay. Brian, over to you.
All right, thanks Andy. And my thanks as well for the opportunity to be here with you for the next couple hours to talk about creative leadership, high performance. My background is in helping organizations, teams, and individuals figure out new ways to grow. That's what we're about, growing in their performance, growing in the outcomes they're able to produce. So we've been focused on how do we do that? How do we understand it? And how do we enable it to happen? Background, a Master's of Science degree in creativity, and creative problem solving, and innovation, and change management, and those kinds of things. So we've been bringing that to bear in the context of organizations, but since about 2003, we've been bringing it also to the sports world, tennis in particular, and a few other sports. But the idea is what obviously can we learn from both contexts to bring together for the benefit of different contexts. It's all about growth. And so what we're going to be focusing on today are some of the theories and the practices associated with how we help people and teams and organizations grow through leadership as the foundation. So we'll be focused on that. If you've ever gone into like a Blackwell's or a bookshop and you see a few books on what can I do to be a better person, a better leader, a better whatever, there's usually a book about it. Right? And I mean, the last time we did a search on just leadership was about 25,000 references come up. So which one do you use? Which one do you read? Which one do you build into your program? Whatever it might be. And so what we're going to be looking at today is what are some of the foundational principles, building on sure some of the things you've experienced and what you work with as well, that explain why people perform at their best. But then in particular look at thinking frameworks and models that we can use to understand and organize all of those resources that are available and pull from that which will help us do what we're trying to do to the best we can do it. All right, so we're going to be looking at you as leaders. We're going to be looking at models and approaches that help you be able to access more and organize it and hopefully better apply it to what you're working on, what you're trying to accomplish. So with that in mind, what we're going to be doing is a focus on looking at the foundations, the ground rules, what's under the surface about what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. By the way, can you hear me okay in the back? Sounds traveling? Great, thank you. So we're looking at understanding what it takes to develop and maintain high performance, the factors that influence it, what is likely to promote it, not promote it, and as we said, some thinking frameworks, some models to help us remember and to be able to apply it in our moments of truth. In the moments of truth that we face in helping others learn and grow and develop. The challenges related to it and some of the steps we can take to ensure that we are ready to help others perform at their best. Okay. Does that make sense? You're in the right room? That's the reason for you? Okay, just checking, because there's lots.
You've all got most of the key graphics in here in the little booklet. All right, I may kind of shout out. You're not going to see every graphic that's in here. So if we go along, and I might just shout out the page number we're on to be able to navigate. All right, so.
Great, thank you. And so, as Andy mentioned, this is going to be an interactive session, so we're going to engage you in activities along the way, but there will be some times where we're talking to you and sharing information to you. So what we thought we'd do is begin with a little technique that's designed to help keep your mind here and in the moment. And it's based on something called in and out listening. All right, so let me explain how it works and where it comes from. And it's the notion that, and you've probably heard some of this research, but the average person can understand about 600 words a minute. We're very fast processors, right? The brain is very powerful. The challenge is, in a situation like this, I'm going to speak, Andy's going to speak at about 100 to 150 words a minute. And when you're dealing with multiple cultures and multiple backgrounds, you may actually even slow down your words to give people a chance to absorb them, right? So those numbers may even go down further. Implication, when that happens, is we have spare time, right? The question is, what do we do with that spare time? Because it's going to happen. Your mind's going to drift in and out in about 15 to 17 second intervals. Kind of threatening when you're up here trying to share information. So our job is to help ourselves stay in the moment a little bit longer, because if we don't, what happens is when we naturally drift, you're going to remember about half of what you hear this morning. All right? About 8 hours later, it's about 35%. All right? So how do we increase the comprehension, the memory, and the ability to focus here when we know this is going to happen anyways? What's it typically called when you're out? There's words for that?
Daydreaming.
Daydreaming, wandering, staring out the window, right? So it's going to happen anyway, so let's capitalize on it. So does everybody have like a pad of paper, something to write on? Because if you don't, we've got some extras up here. Does anybody need some paper? Okay. So we got some pads of paper. Anybody else?
These aren't great to write on with a pen. You can just about, but they are designed to be slightly coffee-proof. So they're not easy to write on. Sharp ones to write on here.
Pen?
Yeah, pens, they'll kind of just...
There's 4 of them in there.
Tricky.
All right, so here's how it works. Very simple technique, but designed to keep our attention in the moment. On the left-hand side, if you would draw a line down the center, wherever you're taking notes, on the left-hand side, write the word in. On the right-hand side, write the word out. And on the left-hand side, and when it says in, what we'll ask you to do is to make whatever notes are relevant to the conversations we're having, the subjects, the reason we're here. Right? As Andy mentioned, most of the graphics, the notes are already taken for you, but whatever other notes you may want to take. All right, insights, etc., active listening, etc. But those times when you go out and you're thinking about, what are you thinking about when you go out? Where does your brain go? You know where it goes. Come on, where's the stuff you're willing to share, of course.
Cottage pie tonight.
Cottage pie tonight, right? Looking forward to it. Right? Haagen-Dazs? All right? What's waiting at work, the things I have to do, right? We know where it goes. That stuff's important, whether it's pies or work, whatever it might be. But our minds are trying to remember it. So we ask you to write that stuff down in the out column. Write it down, track it. It's things, out thoughts, whatever they might be. Then decide, is that relevant? Is there a potential application for what we're talking about here for that subject? Is there a whole new way to create cottage pie? Right? But think about the potentials of the opportunity to apply what we're talking about to those contexts. What happens when you write it down, by the way? What happens when you write it down?
Remembering.
Right? Now I'm remembering it. The reason it came up in my head is because I want to remember it. So I write it down, I'm much more likely to let it go and bring my mind back into the moment. Okay? Now if I say Alex, and I mention someone's name, he's all of a sudden back in. There are other ways to bring people back in. But one of the ways we can do it ourselves is take the notes, track it, and then just leave it, think about how it applies, and then we can move on back into the moment. Does that make sense? Okay? So try that as we're traveling through, and a bit of in and out listening along the way. That'll help us stay here. Okay. So let's get into the foundations, the ground rules, the groundwork in looking at creative leadership. So why are we talking about it? What's its relevance to what we're dealing with here? The bottom line is we need those performers. We said leaders create followers. We need those followers to be able to perform at their best, right? That's what we're looking for. And what does it mean for them to be able to perform at their best? We need them to be independent thinkers, creative problem solvers, right? Innovators, folks who can on their own problem solve in ways that raise their ability to deal with novel, complex, and ambiguous challenges. We're not always there with our followers, are we? Right? Sometimes the best judge of a leader is what their followers do when the leader's not present. You ever heard that definition? Right? So how do we help them be the best they can be when the moment arises for them to lead, for them to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish? That's what we're talking about. All right? And so as good leaders, what do? We give them information, skills, strategy, things that we know will help them. Things we believe will help them. But with all that in mind, despite all of that, if you've ever experienced it, when the moment actually arises, they don't always perform to the level that you'd expect them to, given the training, the background, the information that they've had at their disposal. Something gets in their way, right? Even though they have all that stuff that we've given them. We can't force them to be great. We can't force them to be at their best, right? We can't make them do that. So what can we do? How do we help them perform at their best, right? So we want to take a look at how we do that. So we've been talking a lot, and you've been sitting a lot, so it's time for our first activity. We mentioned this would be also a physical experience. So if you would please, we're going to ask you to stand up, face a partner, and we'll see if we have an even number of folks, because we may involve Andy in this thing. If you would please, stand up, find a partner. See if we have even numbers. Anybody not have a partner? We got even numbers? Nice. Everybody's got a partner? Okay, here's how it goes. What we'd like you to do, if you would please, it's to identify a person A and a person B. In your pairs, a person A, a person B. That was easy. Check. Okay. They're doing it in the back? Okay. All right, here's the task. Ready? Person A, congratulations, you're the leader. Well done. Pat yourselves on the back, leader. Person B, you are the follower. Congratulations, you are the follower. Here's how it's going to work. Here's your task. I'll be person A, Andy will be person B. Your task is to put your hands as close together as possible without touching them. All right? Person A, you're the leader, so you move your hands. Person B, you follow. And your job is to keep your hands as close together. Sorry. All right, that's your task. You got about a minute. Go.
Do that one again. How do you put your hands up like you did? How do I follow that?
I was going to, you can't.
I was like, I don't know how to follow that. So you move. So you move your location. You actually move your foot.
I think I'm moving.
It's filming, so I'm not going to worry about any photographs.
Okay, another 10 seconds. Keep going. Another 10 seconds. Okay, beautiful, wonderful. Stop there, but don't move. Stay right where you are. All right. Person A, I hope you were nice, because now it's person B's turn. Person B, you're the leader. Person A, you're the follower. Same task. 1 minute. Go. Okay, another 10 seconds. Okay, beautiful. Thank you very much. Have a seat. Wonderful. Little morning calisthenics. We thought that might be good to get the blood going. All right, it's like a 2-minute exercise just to experience leadership. All right, so let's talk about the experience. What did you notice going on during the activity? What did you see happening? What did you experience?
We talked to each other.
You talked to each other? What kinds of things did you talk about?
We discussed the task.
Okay.
We said it was to get your hands as close to possible as each other, so we just stood there and didn't move.
Okay.
Because that was the task.
Okay. Okay.
So because you demonstrated that,
All right.
that wasn't the task. The task was to get your hands as close as possible, so that's what we worked on.
Got it. So you talked about it, defined it, and then implemented based on the conversation.
Yeah.
Great. Others, what'd you do? What happened? What'd you experience?
Became competitive.
Being competitive? I don't know why. Why would that happen? So between you, each other, or between other? Ah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Because it could have been. There was a lot of three-dimensional space going on. A little of this, right? There was a whole bunch of that going on too. So a wide range of activities. Let's zone in specifically. What was it like being the leader? What was it like being the leader?
More cognitively demanding.
More cognitively demanding. So you had to think about it a lot. You had to. What were you thinking about? What was the demand?
Was I looking like a dad dancer?
What's that?
Was I looking like a dad dancer?
Okay. Yeah. So how was I being perceived? What did I look like? Right. Potential embarrassments related to that.
Generally, yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. Okay. Others. What's the demand?
Ways to make it difficult.
Ways to make it difficult. Right. And how much difficulty do I add? Right. Absolutely.
Did the opposite. How to make it simple.
How to make it simple. Right. That's the range, isn't it?
How to engage person B.
That's right. How to engage my follower in the task at hand. Isn't that one of the challenges we have is in leadership? Is the balance between challenge and ease, that whole continuum? Because as you were talking about, could I made it impossible for my follower to follow? Could I have done that? Like you were talking about, some of us have bigger wingspans than others, right? And if I had a huge wingspan and my person B didn't, I could have made it impossible for them to follow. Right? That's the extreme challenge, impossibility. Or as you talked about, I could have made it extremely easy to follow. So what's the benefit of adding challenge and balancing challenge? Why is that a good thing? What does that do?
It's fun.
Okay, so it stretches, it's fun. Okay, testing boundaries, growth, things like that come from testing boundaries, right? We continually expand our horizons as we grow. Right? Absolutely. So I can stretch, but I can stretch it too far, right? That's the watch out. What happens if I go here? What was the implication of, or what are the implications if I make it too easy? What happens there? If it stays too easy too long, what happens? So boredom can kick in, engagement issues, all that empowerment type stuff, or at least desire, enthusiasm, motivation, if it stays there too long, right? So one of the challenges we have is how much challenge as a leader to put into the situation, right? What was it like being the follower? What was it like to follow? Not used to following.
Well, you had to be compliant up to a point.
Compliant up to a point.
Up to a point.
Say more about the point. Where is the point? There's a line there somewhere. That's what I'm hearing.
Places where my body really couldn't go. My flexibility.
Yep.
We weren't the same though. We weren't the same in arm span and height.
Okay,
So there was that point where you just think, I wonder what would happen if I just went and did this. How they'll react to it.
Right. So how my leader will react to it, how the leader will, right? Because I know I can't do that, so maybe I do this. How will they? So,
Wonder what will happen.
all right. So kind of managing up a little bit, right? Neat. What else? What else was it like being the follower?
Not trying to predict what they were trying to do.
Trying to figure out what they were going to do, trying to follow it, literally. Okay, Great. Where are they going to go next? And can I predict and all that? Right? What else?
I felt really supported by my leader because he was talking me through where we were to go, so it kind of felt like a joint project.
All right, so the leader's talking to you, and you're working together to figure out how to make it happen and how to follow well, given where the leader was going to take you. All right, so conversation was happening. Neat, neat. All right, so it's a quick little exercise. What does it tell us about leadership? It's pretty complex. This is a task just doing this, and this is the stuff you're dealing with. Cognitive complexity, et cetera, right? What else?
Is this something that an instinctual reaction where you take on too much responsibility as a leader? That your first reaction is to take all the responsibility and not share it immediately?
We often see people take in and not necessarily share, and we're going to talk about that, because one of the characteristics of high-performing leadership is the sharing of power and influence. And if we take it in and we try to hold it all, the burden falls to us. Right? And that just adds burden. It adds to the cognitive challenge and all the things we have to manage because it is complex. Absolutely.
There's an emotion piece in there as well.
Yeah. How does emotions play out? Yeah. Potential embarrassment might have been an emotion, right?
Or I'm holding on to it because I don't want to burden the other person.
Right.
So I'm kind of cognizant of they're starting out, they're really on in their career or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So let me look after this, but actually I'm not going to stand in
Right.
detriment to myself. Or
Yeah.
actually, is it a helpful thing to give them some of the burden of an apprenticeship?
Right. So making decisions based on the effects they may have on others. Right? Absolutely. And the emotional relationship that's there. Absolutely. So leadership it's a relationship. It's a relationship between me and my follower. And it's a two-way relationship. There are expectations flowing in both directions. Right? Leaders expecting followers to be able to perform well, and followers expecting to get from leaders what they need to perform well. Right? What did you do in your leadership role to help your follower be successful? One was there was conversation, communication going on. What else did you do? What did you do to help your follower be successful?
Didn't rush.
Didn't rush. Okay. Took the time so they could follow. Great. So the pacing. What else? You asked them if they wanted to take informed consent, voluntary participation, those kind of things. Neat.
Focused on the outcome.
Focused on the outcome. This is the outcome we have in mind. Let's design a process that delivers that, a way of operating that delivers that. Great. Okay. So there are things you can do, right? That's what we do as leaders. We have methods and approaches we can use to help our followers be successful. That's what we want to talk about. And the question is, what is it? What's in their frame of mind that helps them be most likely to perform at their best, whatever the task is? How do we help them be the most successful they can be? That's what we want to talk about. So well done on that. All we can do, in a nutshell, is establish the conditions by which someone will perform at their best. That's what we do. Did you make your follower perform well? No. Right? But the things you do are designed to set the conditions for them to be able to function at their best. That's what we do. It's like the whole growth analogy, right? Farmers don't actually grow the plants. They set the conditions by which the plants grow. That's what growth's all about. We're trying to grow people and their ability to perform, right? We want leaders to continually grow and perform better so we can be successful as a whole. We need to set the conditions for that to happen. That's what we do. It's like indirect leadership, or it's leadership with indirect influence on growth. So that's one of the reasons we like this definition. This is Kouzes and Posner, if you're familiar with the two of those folks. But leadership, all right, it's an art. A little bit of science in there too, but it's the art of mobilizing, right? Folks, to want, right? Can't make, they have to want to engage in aspirations that we share. It's just a neat definition, because that's kind of what that was about, even in a micro example. But that's what we're talking about, to help them now, with that in mind, perform at a high level. But what we mean by high level, what we mean by high performance, is an internal reference point. Whatever the skills, talents, abilities, motivations that person has, they perform those, they use them to their highest levels in that moment, whatever level they're at. Because we hope they'll grow over time, right? So that level is going to change. So the frame of reference is self. Do my skills play out to my maximum capability in that moment? That's what we're talking about, versus did I, what the external reference point was. Did I win the contract? Did I win the tournament? Whatever it might be, all right? Did I perform at my best in the moment? That gives me the greatest chance of getting the outcomes I'm looking for is when I perform at my best. So that's what we're using as the frame of reference. How we help people use their gifts, their talents, their skills, their knowledge for that moment of truth to the best they're capable of. Does that make sense? That's the frame of reference? Okay.
How do you know what they're capable of?
That's a great question. How do you know what people are capable of?
You test them.
Okay, you test them, you see what, and you see them over time, right? You see what patterns they have is one way.
But that's answering the bottom.
What's that?
That's the test is winning the gold or winning a medal or whatever it is. But you talked about potential and
Right.
what they're capable of. So how can you measure capability?
Depends what you're measuring. If you're measuring outcome, those are the measures you use. But what are the mechanisms that are necessary to get those? Those are the things you measure. How capable am I to run at a certain speed? How fast can I make decisions? How effectively can I communicate? So the means by which I reach those, that's what you focus on. And I don't know if you ever know someone's capability because it's a dynamic thing, right? You hope, in fact, it's continually changing. So you put people in situations to see where they successfully accomplish the objectives in mind, right? And we're in situations where they go beyond where they're ready to be able to perform. And you understand that, and that gives you a sense of where they are. It doesn't say where they're capable of. You just keep pushing until you know. In fact, I was reading the book, Make the Boat Go Faster, right? And in there they talked about it. You never really know the capability because it's always changing. Every time you learn, the capability changes. So as long as they're in learning mode and they're moving forward, that's the ultimate objective. How far they'll get is the question that remains to be seen based on how much energy they put in, how much drive they have, and the factors that will help them actually grow. So it's in theory, we're trying to get them as far as they can get where they are in the moment. Do we ever know exactly what it is? No, but it's the goal to be able to help them push the boundary and continually move that line forward, to continually raise the line.
Just on that,
Go ahead.
I agree with you. But when you're in a performance environment and you have to select and deselect, to suggest or go to a funding body and say, it's okay, we're developing everyone to reach their potential, which we don't know which it is. So could we have some more money? I don't think they would agree. So that's I think, is a real difficult one, because I think everyone in the room would probably agree, but
Yeah.
there still needs to be, in some way, who am I going to carry on with and who will be no further investment.
Right, right. And when we do it in tennis, the person I've been teaching tennis has been teaching for 40 years. And there are some, with expertise, he can look at a person who's 5 years old and looking at the qualities of the person, do a pretty good gauge about how far they're likely to be able to go. But it's not how good they are now, but he looks at the qualities necessary to perform that well. And looks at, for example, hand-eye coordination, footwork, things like that, the condition, the things necessary to. But it's theory because many other variables come into play on how far someone will actually go. Do the parents have the resources, right? Do they have the time balance with other priorities? Do they have the interest to push that hard? A lot of variables actually play out, so it is a good question. Is how do you make that decision about how we promote and support and give revenue to and select?
Because that's probably one of the biggest moments of truth I think they've chance.
Yeah. Are they a good learner?
You.
Right, absolutely. And so the goal is to help them be able to do that, but we have some conditions that will, whatever those talents are, push them to whatever the level that they're capable of. We don't know exactly what it is, but it puts them in a growth mode. And that's ultimately the challenge we have, is how do we help them grow to whatever they're capable of growing to?
I just come back, just check on the question. This is like people funding what we're doing, is they kind of want certainty on where the investment's going to get the outcome. And we can't provide the certainty, right? So there's a kind of bit of a game going on, is kind of trying to figure out, people always want certainty, it seems, about, if we put our money here, we're going to get this kind of outcome. Is that the kind of the conundrum you're in?
Well, two conundrums. One, where you've got a funding body, and the other one is you're speaking to mum and dad who are also making an investment and say, you're in the wrong game, you need to try something else, because effectively we're making a judgment at an age and say, in our moment of truth, we are making a judgment on you that the athlete may say, well, you're absolutely wrong. Good
Sure.
on you.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest challenge
Yeah.
coaches over would have is
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
who do you support, who don't you support,
Yeah.
and how you measure that is, well, we know it's definitely not win or lose.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it is to
Yeah.
everybody.
So, and that's one of the tasks you have to deal with, right? And so what we're also looking at is whoever's making that decision, how do we help ensure that they're in the best frame of mind to do the best possible job of making the selections? That's the other question. What are they paying attention to? How well are they thinking about the athletes in front of them, for example, to be able to put the best recommendations forward? How do you know they're in the best frame of mind to help make the recommendations? We're also talking about that as well. Yeah.
How do you distinguish it between high performing and high performance? So you've got high performing there, because my understanding and my interpretation of high performing is the description of your high performance. How does that differ for you?
Yeah.
High performing for me is how you described it, but high performance is we're all from a high performance environment. At the end of the day, we have to win medals or we don't get money.
Right.
So it's important, but what you're saying, I think, is high performing is equally important.
Yeah. What we're focusing on is the performing. That's the part we're focused on. High performance sounds like an end state. It's an end state relative, as we've been talking about, to the person. So it's how do I help someone engage in high performing behaviors and thought processes and managing emotions and things like that. So it's more about the high performing as opposed to the outcome of performance, if that's the definition of performance. Right. So yeah. Okay. And it's whatever that moment of truth is. So if I'm leading in a situation, my job is to help those around me function at their best, right? In that situation that they're capable of. So if there's one thing that affects the likelihood that someone's gifts and talents, whether it's making decisions or whatever it might be, what's the one thing that goes through all situations? What's the one thing that I take to